Today's deep dive is taking us into a world you might not expect.
Oh.
The Vatican's finances.
Okay.
We're not talking about just like your typical Sunday collection plate here.
Right.
This is going deep into the financial heart of the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
A story full of twists and turns that, honestly, you just wouldn't believe.
I mean, when you think about it,
Yeah.
this documentary actually claims the Vatican holds the largest real estate portfolio globally.
I know, right? It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
It is.
So we're going to be using a 2024 YouTube documentary as our guide for this deep dive from the FINAiUS channel.
Okay.
And we're going to uncover how this empire was built over centuries.
Right.
From its early beginnings to the modern era, and trust me,
Yeah.
it's a wild ride.
I bet.
We're talking Renaissance indulgences, alleged Nazi gold, whispers of mafia connections.
Wow.
We're covering it all.
Sounds fascinating.
So let's rewind all the way back to the early days, long before modern finance as we know it.
Okay.
How did the Vatican generate income back then?
Well, one of their primary strategies was the sale of indulgences.
Indulgences.
Yeah, essentially offering forgiveness for sins in exchange for payment.
So like paying your way out of sin.
Exactly. It was a system that for a while brought in significant revenue.
Makes sense.
But as you can imagine, it wasn't without controversy.
Right. That's where Martin Luther and the Reformation come in.
Exactly.
Those indulgences became a major point of contention. Didn't that cause a pretty significant financial setback for the Vatican?
Absolutely. The Reformation triggered a major financial setback for the church,
Yeah.
forcing them to reevaluate their approach. And then, as they were recovering, another major event shook their financial foundations.
What was that?
The French Revolution. Napoleon's rise to power
Right.
resulted in the invasion of Rome and the tragic death of Pope Pius VI.
Wow.
It was a truly turbulent period.
Yeah, that definitely puts things into perspective.
It does.
So the church was in dire straits at this point.
They were?
And that's when they turned to a surprising source for help. The Rothschilds.
Interesting.
Isn't that kind of ironic considering some historical tensions there?
It is. It's a pivotal moment
Right.
that demonstrates the lengths the Vatican was willing to go to for survival.
Yeah.
Borrowing money, even from a prominent Jewish banking family, became a necessity.
Wow.
This marked a turning point, propelling the Vatican into the world of modern finance.
So fast forward to 1929.
Okay.
The signing of the Lateran Treaty creates Vatican City as an independent state.
Right?
And the church receives a substantial sum of money as part of the deal.
Yes.
This is where Bernardino Nogara steps onto the scene.
He does.
He became the Vatican's financial mastermind during the tumultuous period of the Great Depression.
Nogara was brilliant. He recognized that diversification was key to weathering economic storms. Instead of simply hoarding the money, he invested heavily in real estate, particularly in Rome.
Interesting. So he had a long-term vision.
Yes. He understood the enduring value of land, especially in a city with such profound historical and religious significance.
So he wasn't just thinking about short-term gains.
No, not at all. He was playing the long game, recognizing the inherent stability of real estate.
But he didn't stop there, did he?
No, he didn't. Nogara also saw the potential of the stock market
Ah,
and made strategic investments in the Bank of Rome.
interesting.
This move paid off handsomely, further strengthening the Vatican's financial position.
So these actions laid the groundwork for their modern financial empire.
They did.
It sounds like Nogara was a visionary,
Yeah.
someone who really understood the complexities of finance
Right.
and could anticipate future trends.
Absolutely.
But then World War II erupted, throwing another wrench into the works.
Of course.
How did he protect the Vatican's assets amidst all that chaos?
Nogara's foresight and strategic thinking truly shone during the war.
Okay.
He had already begun transferring assets to neutral countries like Switzerland and the United States before the conflict escalated. And when America imposed sanctions on the Axis powers, he skillfully secured exemptions for the Vatican.
Wow.
He was always one step ahead.
That's incredible.
It is.
He managed to safeguard the church's wealth during one of the most turbulent periods in modern history.
He did.
This era also saw the establishment of the Vatican Bank, also known as the IOR,
Right.
the Institute for the Works of Religion.
Yes.
What was the motivation behind creating this institution?
The creation of the Vatican Bank aimed to consolidate the church's financial operations,
Makes sense.
and some argued to shield them from external scrutiny.
Okay.
This move provided greater control and, crucially, secrecy over their financial dealings.
And that secrecy would become a topic of intense scrutiny in the years that followed?
It would.
Especially with those persistent allegations of Nazi gold being laundered through the Vatican Bank.
Right.
This seems like a pretty murky chapter in their history.
Well, the Vatican has consistently denied any involvement in illicit activities. These accusations have cast a long shadow over their financial operations. The lack of transparency surrounding the Vatican Bank has fueled speculation and public distrust.
It definitely raises some red flags.
It does.
This secrecy and the allegations surrounding the Vatican Bank, it seems like we're heading towards a period of controversy and potential scandal.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
As we move into the latter half of the 20th century, we encounter figures like Michele Sindona,
Okay.
a lawyer with alleged ties to the mafia,
Oh, wow.
and Roberto Calvi, an ambitious banker.
Interesting.
Their partnerships with the Vatican, while initially lucrative, ultimately entangled the church in a web of intrigue and controversy.
It sounds like things are about to get even more complicated.
They are.
Stay with us as we delve into these risky partnerships and the scandals that rock the Vatican's financial world in the next part of our deep dive.
These partnerships, particularly the ones with Sindona and Calvi,
Right.
they were instrumental in expanding the Vatican's financial influence
Okay.
globally, especially during like the 1960s and 70s.
Okay.
They facilitated investments
Okay.
in a really wide array of ventures,
Like what?
from real estate to banking.
Okay.
But as the documentary kind of reveals these dealings,
Yeah.
they weren't exactly characterized by transparency.
Right. So we're not talking about ethical investments here.
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
These ventures involved offshore shell companies,
Oh, wow.
secret bank accounts,
Okay.
even allegations of money laundering,
Really?
potentially for the mafia.
Oh, wow.
This lack of transparency,
Yeah.
it would eventually catch up with the Vatican.
It seems like those risky maneuvers were bound to backfire at some point.
For sure.
The documentary suggests that Archbishop Paul Marcinkus,
Right.
the head of the Vatican Bank at the time,
Yes.
might have been aware of some of these questionable activities.
It's possible.
Was he naive, or was there something more at play?
Well, that's a question. That's
Yeah.
really puzzled historians and investigators.
Rakes.
Some believe Marcinkus was genuinely unaware
Okay.
of the extent of the illicit activities,
Okay.
while others suspect he may have turned a blind eye,
I see.
perhaps driven by a desire to increase the church's wealth.
It's like ambition might have overshadowed ethical considerations.
Yeah, potentially.
And wasn't there a point where this whole intricate structure
Yes.
started to unravel?
There was Sindona's empire began to crumble
Okay.
in the late 1970s
What happened?
due to some really risky foreign exchange trades.
Okay.
That resulted in massive losses
Oh, wow.
for Franklin National Bank,
Right.
which he had acquired.
Right.
This, coupled with failing investments in Italy,
Yeah.
caused his entire financial edifice to collapse.
Wow. So his downfall had a domino effect,
That's true.
impacting those connected to him.
Exactly.
So who else was affected?
Well, Sindona's arrest and extradition to Italy
Okay.
left Calvi
Right.
in a very vulnerable position.
Yeah.
He desperately tried to distance himself from Sindona, even attempting to take control of some of his assets.
Wow.
But it was too late.
It sounds like a frantic attempt to save a sinking ship.
It was.
The documentary really captures the drama of this period.
It does.
Calvin ultimately fled Italy
He did.
in 1982,
Yes.
ending in his mysterious death
Right.
in London.
Found hanging from Blackfriars Bridge.
It's like something straight out of a spy novel.
It is quite dramatic.
So was it suicide,
Well,
or was there something more sinister at play?
the circumstances surrounding Calvi's death,
Yeah.
they remain shrouded in mystery to this day.
Oh, wow.
Some theorize that he took his own life,
Okay.
overwhelmed by the collapse of his financial empire,
Yeah.
while others suspect foul play,
Okay.
pointing fingers at the mafia,
Right.
or perhaps even individuals within the Vatican
Really?
who might have wanted to silence him.
That's a chilling thought. And shortly after, Sindona also died
He did.
under mysterious circumstances.
Yes.
Poisoned with cyanide.
Right.
Held in prison.
These deaths,
Yeah.
combined with the collapse of Banco Ambrosiano,
Okay.
in which both Sindona and Calvi were heavily involved,
Right.
dealt a severe blow to the Vatican's reputation.
Wow. What happened after that?
Well, they were ultimately forced to pay
Yeah.
a substantial settlement to the bank's creditors.
So the Vatican did acknowledge
They did.
their involvement
Yes,
and agree to a significant financial settlement.
they did. The impact of this scandal
Yeah.
was far-reaching.
How so?
Well, donations from the faithful declined,
Oh, wow.
and there were increasing demands
For what?
for greater transparency and accountability
Yeah.
from the church.
Right.
The Vatican's image suffered
Yeah.
considerable damage.
So they were facing a crisis of confidence.
They were.
In addition to their financial woes,
Absolutely.
what steps did they take to try and recover from this?
Well, in an attempt to restore its image,
Okay.
the church appointed Angelo Caloia,
Okay.
a well-respected banker. It sounds like a monumental task,
Yeah, it was.
especially considering what was about to happen.
Oh,
The devastating sexual abuse scandals
right.
that rocked the Catholic Church
Yes.
in the early 2000s.
Of course.
What kind of impact did those scandals have?
Those scandals had a profound impact,
Okay.
both morally and financially.
Yeah.
The church faced a deluge of lawsuits,
Oh, wow.
settlements, and legal fees,
Yeah.
which placed an enormous financial strain
Right.
on dioceses around the world.
Wow.
Some dioceses were even forced to declare bankruptcy.
It was a truly devastating period.
It was.
It's a dark chapter in the church's history. Absolutely.
The financial repercussions were huge,
They were.
but the erosion of trust
Right.
was perhaps even more significant.
It was a very difficult time.
Did Pope Benedict XVI,
Yes.
who led the church during this time,
Yes.
do enough to address the crisis? Or did his response fall short?
Well, Pope Benedict XVI did take some steps,
Like what?
acknowledging the severity of the situation.
Okay.
And he met with victims.
Okay.
However, many critics argued that his actions
Yep.
were too little too late.
So the scandal continued to cast a shadow over his papacy.
It did.
This, combined with the ongoing financial difficulties
Right.
and internal power struggles,
Of course.
created a tumultuous environment
It did.
within the Vatican.
It was a very challenging period.
Ultimately, it led to his resignation
It did.
in 2013,
Yes.
an almost unprecedented event
It was.
in modern times.
Yes.
And that's when Pope Francis took the helm,
He did.
a figure perceived by many
Right.
as a symbol of hope. And change, his emphasis on humility and transparency,
Yes.
seemed like a breath of fresh air,
It did.
especially regarding the Vatican's historically secretive financial dealings.
Absolutely.
Pope Francis's approach
Yeah.
marked a significant shift
It did.
from his predecessors.
He really wanted to do things differently.
How so?
Well, he rejected lavish displays of wealth,
Okay,
opting for a simply lifestyle,
I see.
and actively pursued reforms within the Vatican Bank.
Okay, like what?
One of his most notable actions was publishing their financial reports
Really?
for the first time
Wow, when was this?
in 2024.
Wow.
This move towards transparency
Yeah.
was a groundbreaking step.
It was a bold move,
It was.
signifying a willingness to break
Right.
from the Vatican's long-standing tradition of secrecy.
For sure.
But was transparency alone enough to address the deeply ingrained issues
That's a very complex question.
within the Vatican's financial system?
While Pope Francis's efforts were commendable, the Vatican is a vast and intricate institution,
Okay.
a very long history
A what?
of operating in the shadows.
Right.
Transforming such an entity
Yeah.
requires more than just a commitment to transparency.
Right. There's also the fact that the Vatican is a sovereign state with its own unique set of rules and regulations.
Absolutely.
That must make it difficult
It does.
to conform to international financial standards
It does.
and prevent things like money laundering.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It creates a unique challenge
Yeah.
in terms of oversight and accountability.
Yeah, for sure.
And we can't overlook the human factor.
What do you mean?
Well, greed, ambition, and corruption
Right.
can exist anywhere,
Yeah.
even within a religious institution.
Yeah, that's true.
It only takes a few individuals making unethical choices
Yeah.
to have a ripple effect
Right.
throughout the entire system.
So, are we witnessing genuine reform within the Vatican? Or are those old habits of secrecy and potentially questionable dealings
Yeah.
still present beneath the surface?
That's a good question.
It seems like there's reason for both optimism and caution.
I think that's an accurate assessment.
So, Pope Francis has undoubtedly made progress.
He has.
But the Vatican's financial past
Yes.
is a tangled web of power,
It is.
Secrecy.
Of course.
And at times, ethical ambiguity.
It's a story that continues to unfold.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
Tracing the Vatican's financial evolution.
It's been quite a journey.
From the early days of indulgences.
Yes.
To the complexities of modern global finance.
Absolutely.
We've encountered fascinating figures.
Some very interesting characters.
Witnessed both triumphs and downfall.
Yes.
And explored the ethical gray areas.
It's been a very complex story.
That have sometimes characterized their operations.
For sure.
What I find particularly striking
What's that?
is the recurring theme of the Vatican striving for financial success.
Right.
Even if it means aligning with controversial figures.
Yes.
Or operating in secrecy.
It's definitely a pattern we've seen.
It raises important questions.
It does.
About the relationship between faith and worldly wealth.
It's a fascinating question.
Doesn't it?
It certainly does.
And that brings us to a crucial question for you, our listener.
Fine.
What does this pursuit of wealth by the Vatican reveal about the intersection of faith and finance? Is it possible for a religious institution to wield significant financial power while upholding ethical standards? Or are those two objectives fundamentally at odds?
That's the question.
We'll leave you to ponder these questions.
It's worth thinking about.
As we wrap up our exploration of the Vatican's intricate and often perplexing financial empire. So we've uncovered a lot in this deep dive. What are some of the specific challenges the Vatican faces in achieving lasting reform?
Well, one major challenge is the Vatican's unique status as a sovereign state.
Right.
Operating under its own set of rules and regulations.
Okay.
This can make it difficult
to
fully comply with international financial standards.
Right.
And effectively prevent things like money laundering.
So even with the best intentions, the Vatican's unique structure might create obstacles to true transparency and accountability. It's not as simple as just saying, we're going to be more open from now on.
Exactly. And let's not forget the human factor.
Right, of course.
We've seen throughout this deep dive that greed, ambition, and corruption can exist anywhere.
That's true.
Even within a religious institution.
Right.
It only takes a few individuals making poor choices to have a ripple effect throughout the entire system.
That's a sobering thought. I hope this deep dive has given you, our listener, a new perspective on this fascinating and often enigmatic institution.
As always, we encourage you to continue exploring these complex issues and form your own conclusions.
Thanks for joining us on this journey.